The priestess warned the king during the war. Take only what is needed and leave their sacred lands untouched. But the king, blinded by his greed and thirst for power, ignored her advice. His soldiers committed a grave sin. They destroyed the sacred forest, burning it to ashes. The priestess, heartbroken and angry, cursed the king's bloodline. Her voice echoed with anger as she declared, "Your son shall suffer for your arrogance. He will have everything a man could desire," she declared, "but love will forever escape him. He will live surrounded by riches, but in complete loneliness, for no woman will stay by his side." In the quiet and peaceful village of Igbede, there lived a prince named Olawale, a man so handsome that he seemed to outshine the morning sun. Prince Olawale had everything anyone could wish for: great wealth, a huge mansion, plenty of land, many buildings, and a presence that amazed everyone. His skin was smooth and dark, his hair thick and rich like fertile soil, and his sharp eyes felt like they could look right into a person's soul. Despite all his riches and the admiration he received, there was one thing missing in Olawale's life: a bride. No matter how many women were drawn to him or how many families hoped to align themselves with his wealth and status, Olawale had yet to find a woman who would stay by his side. Though he was surrounded by luxury and endless admiration, his heart remained relentless, yearning for something he couldn't quite name or understand. Olawale grew up in his grandmother's house, where she cared for him like a mother. The queen was often too busy with her royal duties, so his grandmother filled that role. Olawale was surrounded by riches and comfort, protected from the struggles of the outside world. But without knowing it, a dark shadow had fallen over his future, shaping the lonely life he would later live. When his grandmother passed away from old age, Olawale returned to the palace. Years went by, and when Olawale became old enough to marry, tragedy struck again. His father, the king, fell seriously ill, and despite all efforts, he could not be saved. When the king died, Olawale and his mother were left in deep sorrow. As the king's only son, Olawale was the heir to the throne and destined to rule Igbede, but tradition demanded that he marry before he could be crowned. Until then, the throne remained empty. His mother took on the responsibility of ruling the kingdom, with Olawale supporting her in keeping the village united. Despite Olawale's wealth and status, the grand halls of Olawale's mansion were silent, echoing with the emptiness of the family he longed for but could not have. Though he was rich and powerful, loneliness weighed heavily on him. Every woman he pursued turned him down, some offering polite excuses while others looking at him with fear in their eyes. Soon, whispers began to spread among the people of Igbede. Why did no woman want to marry the prince? He had everything anyone could ever dream of: wealth, power, and charm. Was something wrong with him? Was he cursed? Or was he hiding a dark secret? These questions echoed through the village, leaving everyone curious about the prince who seemed to have it all but remained without a wife. What the people of Igbede did not know was that Prince Olawale bore a heavy curse. Many years earlier, during the reign of his father, the king had waged war against a neighboring village to seize more land and expand his wealth. Driven by ambition, the king dismissed the warnings of the village priestess, a wise woman known to possess the knowledge of their ancestors. Her words were clear, but the king refused to listen. Take only what is needed and leave their sacred lands untouched, the priestess warned. But the king, blinded by his greed and thirst for power, ignored her advice. The war was brutal, but Prince Olawale's father was victorious, expanding his reign as he had desired. However, in their victory, his soldiers committed a grave sin. They destroyed a sacred forest, burning it to ashes. The priestess began to weaken as the spirits of the forest turned against her. Though the destruction had been caused by her king, the spirits held her responsible for failing to protect the sacred land. Her strength faded, and she became heartbroken and angry, caused the king's bloodline. Her voice echoed with anger as she declared, "Your son shall suffer for your arrogance. He will have everything a man could desire," she declared, "but love will forever escape him. He will live surrounded by riches, but in complete loneliness, for no woman will stay by his side." The priestess died as she was punished by the spirit. The king thought the curse was just an empty threat and decided to ignore it. Instead, he focused on his victory and celebrated with the village. The people sang, danced, and feasted late into the night, unaware of the danger that might come. That curse now hung over Prince Olawale, unseen by the villagers but deeply felt in his heart. Prince Olawale had been just a boy when the curse was placed, too young to understand what was happening. The talk of war and his father's victory were nothing more than stories to him. As Olawale grew older, the curse began to show itself. At first, it was hard to notice. Women would laugh at his jokes and seem drawn to his charm, but soon after, their smiles would disappear and they would grow distant. Some said they felt a strange discomfort around him, like something unseen was pushing them away. Others simply lost interest for no clear reason, their feelings fading as quickly as the disappearing morning sunlight. Still unaware of the curse, Prince Olawale refused to give up. He believed he hadn't tried hard enough and thought maybe the right person was yet to come. He hosted big feasts and celebrations, hoping to find someone who would stay with him. His palace shined with jewels, and music filled the halls, but none of it could win a woman's heart. Determined, Prince Olawale traveled far beyond Igbede. He visited nearby villages and distant lands, offering his hand in marriage to noble women and princesses. But each time, the result was the same: rejection after rejection, with reasons that changed but always ended in him being left alone. The constant heartbreak wore him down. Once known for his bright smile and strong confidence, Olawale began to pull away from others. He spent long hours alone, his heart burdened with questions he couldn't answer. Why was he, a man with everything, destined to be without love? It wasn't until his mother, the queen, finally sat him down and revealed the truth to him. She told him about the war his father had fought and the curse the priestess had placed upon the family. "Your father thought the curse was just a warning," she said, her voice filled with guilt and tears flowing down from her eyes. "He believed time would erase it, but now I see that it has followed you like a shadow." The weight of her words overwhelmed Olawale. For years, he had blamed himself, thinking he was unworthy of love. Now he realized it wasn't his fault. It was the curse, a punishment that wasn't his doing, yet one he had to carry alone. This new understanding did not bring him comfort. Instead, it only deepened his sadness. Even though he now knew the truth, it didn't offer him a solution. The curse was strong, born from the anger of the priestess. How could he fight something so old and hard to understand? Still, a small part of him held on to hope. Maybe there was a way to break the curse. Maybe love, even though it's so hard to find, could still come to him. The people of Igbede, Curious about Prince Olawale's loneliness, never asked him directly. Instead, they talked in whispers in the market and under the baobab trees. Some believed that under his good looks, the prince must have a heart as cold as stone. Others talked about the curse passed down from his father's sins. A few ignored the gossip, thinking he was just unlucky, destined to be alone despite his wealth and charm. Through it all, Olawale carried the weight of their whispers with quiet strength. Even though his heart hurt from being alone, he refused to let it take over. If love wouldn't come to him, he decided to give his heart to his people. He worked hard to rule Igbede with kindness and fairness. Olawale visited every part of the village, learning about the struggles of his people. He worked in the fields with farmers, helping them plant yams and maize. He made sure no family went hungry, sharing grains from the royal farms in times of need. He built schools so children could learn and clinics to help the sick. The people of Igbede loved their prince deeply, even though they felt sorry for the emptiness in his eyes when he returned to his grand, empty palace. Despite all his hard work, Olawale never stopped looking for a way to break the curse. Late at night, when the village was quiet, he would sit by the fire, read through old scrolls, and listen to stories from the village storytellers. Many of the stories spoke of curses and how they were broken, but none of them gave him a clear answer. One day, all the villagers were preparing for the cassava festival that was about to happen, and different people from other villages came to Igbede to join them in their celebration. An old woman came to Igbede to also participate in the celebration. She traveled alone with nothing but a walking stick and a bundle on her back. She was called Mama Nkechi, a wandering healer and storyteller whose wisdom was said to be as great as that of the ancestors. When she heard about the prince's troubles, she asked to meet with him. When she entered the palace, her gaze seemed to see straight into Olawale's soul. She listened as he told her the story of the curse, his voice filled with years of longing and sadness. When he finished, she nodded slowly. The priestess' anger was great, and her curse is strong, she said. But curses are like wounds. They can heal if tended to with care. But before I tell you a way to break the curse, you must pay a price, Mama Nkechi said. Olawale frowned. What kind of price, Mama? He asked. Mama Nkechi pointed to the golden bracelet on his wrist. It was the last gift his grandmother had given him before she passed away, a symbol of love and protection. Olawale's heart sank. That bracelet was his most cherished possession, the one thing that connected him to her. Mama, this bracelet means everything to me, he said, his voice shaking. That is why it must be the price, she replied gently. The spirits require proof of your sincerity. You must give up what you hold dearest. Tears welled up in Olawale's eyes, but he knew he had no choice. Slowly, he removed the bracelet and placed it in Mama Nkechi's hands. I give this in the hope that it will help me undo the wrongs of the past, he said softly. Mama Nkechi took the bracelet and closed her eyes, murmuring a quiet prayer. This is the first step, child. Hold on to your resolve, for the road ahead will demand even greater sacrifices. You must return to the land your father wronged and make amends. Only there will you find the key to your freedom. Olawale wasn't sure if Mama Nkechi's advice would work, but he chose to try it because he was desperate for his solution. He was also afraid of returning to the sacred land, knowing his father's war had caused great destruction to the neighboring village, turning it into a ghost land. Olawale told his mother about his journey, and she wished him good luck. Before he left, she taught him a special song to sing if he ever found himself in danger. Olawale hugged his mother tightly and left Igbede. Carrying offerings of cowries, food, and clothes, Olawale set off for the sacred forest that his father's soldiers had burned. The journey was long and trouble began before he arrived at the forest. Olawale walked deep into the forest. When he came across a small stream, he knelt to drink because he was thirsty. Suddenly, he felt a cold hand grab his ankle. Startled, he looked down and saw pale, bony fingers rising from the water. It was a drowned spirit. Its dark eyes stared at him, and in a cold voice it whispered, "Why do you come here, son of destruction?" Olawale was scared, pulled his foot away, and quickly ran from the stream, his heart racing. Though shaken by the encounter, he reminded himself of why he had come to the forest and continued on his journey. Later that night, Olawale decided to rest, but before he could sleep, he noticed movement in the shadows. A pack of hyenas surrounded him, their glowing eyes watching him closely. Their loud laughter filled the air, sending chills down his spine. Holding his bag tightly, Olawale began to sing a song of protection his mother had taught him. The melody seemed to confuse the hyenas, and after circling him for what felt like hours, they finally walked away into the darkness. At dawn, Olawale entered a quiet part of the forest where the air felt strange, thick and heavy, as though it carried a warning. Suddenly, a heavy wind blew, strong enough to knock him off balance. The wind twisted until it formed a tall, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. Its voice boomed, shaking the ground. "Why do you disturb us?" Olawale dropped to his knees, trembling. "I have come to make amends for what was done here," he said. "I bring what I have and ask for forgiveness." The figure stared at him in silence before vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Alone once more, Olawale's heart pounded, but he refused to give up. When he finally reached the sacred forest, it was nothing like he had imagined. Instead of a wasteland, he found new trees growing tall and flowers covering the ground in vibrant colors. The air was sweet, but Olawale could still feel the spirits watching him. In the heart of the forest, he knelt and placed the remaining offerings on the ground. "I come not as a prince, but as a man," he said. "Please forgive the wrongs of my father." He stayed there for days, fasting and praying, waiting for a sign that the spirits had heard him. On the third night, under the bright light of the full moon, a vision appeared. A woman with eyes that shone like stars and a voice as gentle as the wind stood before him. She was the priestess who had cast the curse on Olawale and is now the guidance spirit of the forest after she died as part of her punishment. "Your sincerity has touched me," she said. "You carry the weight of your father's mistake with dignity and modesty. Unlike him, you have lived an honest life. You have been loyal and kind to your people, and you have gained your wealth without greed. For this, I will give you a chance to find love, but remember, love cannot be forced or bought. You must earn it with patience and understanding." With those words, the priestess lifted the curse, but she left one condition. Olawale could only win the heart of a woman who loved him for who he truly was, not for his wealth or power. The priestess vanished. She was freed from her punishments, and her spirit was now laid to rest. When Olawale returned to Igbede, he felt a newfound sense of peace in his heart. Though the path ahead remained uncertain, he was filled with hope. Gradually, he began to open his heart again, not through grand displays of riches, but with simple and sincere gestures that showed his true self. Soon, the villagers began to notice a change. not in his loneliness, but in the warmth that had returned to Prince Olawale's eyes. Women in the village started to show interest in him, and wealthy families from neighboring villages came to Igbede, offering their daughters in marriage. Change had begun, bringing the hope of a love that could heal even the deepest pain. After the curse was lifted, Olawale returned to his role as prince with fresh determination. This time, he cared less about impressing others and focused on being himself. He spent more time with the villagers, not as their ruler but as one of them. He ate meals with them, listened to their stories, and joined their festivals with laughter and joy. It was during this festival, the Cassava Harvest Festival, that the villagers had been preparing for, that Olawale met someone who would change his life forever. Her name was Aduni, a quiet yet bold young woman who worked as a potter. She was well known in the village for her crafts, creating pots and sculptures. That evening, as the sound of drums filled the air and villagers danced around the fire, Olawale noticed Aduni sitting quietly at the edge of the crowd. Unlike the others, who were dressed in bright fabrics and fine beads, she wore a simple wrapper and scarf, her hands still dirty with clay from the day's work. Yet there was something about her, a calm presence, a quiet confidence that caught his attention. Leaving the circle of elders, Olawale walked over to her. "You are not joining the dance," he asked gently. Aduni was surprised to see the prince speaking to her. "Dancing isn't my strength," she said with a shy smile. "I prefer to watch and feel the rhythm in my way." Curious, Olawale sat down beside her. "And what is your strength?" he asked. She held up her hands, showing him the faint stains of clay. "Creating, shaping, bringing clay to life." Their conversation flowed naturally, and Olawale found himself drawn to her honesty. Unlike others who tried to impress him or act differently because of his status, Aduni spoke to him as though he was just a regular man. She asked him about his life, not about his wealth or power, but about his dreams and fears. For the first time in years, Olawale felt truly understood. In the days that followed, Olawale began visiting Aduni's pottery shed, eager to learn more about her craft. He watched as she worked with the clay, shaping it carefully with skill and love, her hands moving as if guided by her heart. Aduni, in turn, saw a different side of the prince, one marked by humbleness and warmth. He didn't seem like the distant figure people whispered about. Instead, he was thoughtful, gentle, and real. As they spent more time together, their friendship deepened. Olawale often helped Aduni with her work, carrying water or gathering firewood for her king. In return, she taught him how to mold clay, laughing at his awkward attempts. For the first time, Olawale felt what it was like to build a connection not based on appearances or expectations, but on genuine understanding and shared moments. One day, as they walked by the river, Olawale opened up about his past. He told Aduni everything: the cause, the years of loneliness, and his journey to seek forgiveness. He feared she might pull away, just as so many others had done before. But she didn't. Instead, she placed her hand gently on his. "You are not your father's mistake," she said softly. "What matters is the man you are now and the choices you make." Her words stayed with Olawale, and he realized how Aduni had come to mean more to him than anyone else ever had. She had seen him at his lowest, not as a prince but as a man, and accepted him completely. One peaceful evening, as the sun set over Igbede, Olawale found the courage to ask a question that had weighed on his heart. "Aduni, will you walk this life with me? Not as a prince looking for a bride, but as a man who has found his home in you. Adoni smiled, her eyes warm and steady. Yes, Olawale, but only if we work together as equals. Their wedding was simple and beautiful, held in the heart of the village. The people of Igbede celebrated with joy. They saw not just the prince and his bride, but two people who had found each other through trust and love. Olawale was crowned the king of Igbede with his queen, Aduni by his side. Olawale ruled Igbede with fairness and kindness. Together, they created a legacy of love and justice, showing that even the deepest pain could heal with honesty, patience, and the courage to be true to oneself.